What is cracking internet, and welcome back once again to Raz TV. I'm your host Raz, today bringing you a particularly special episode in my Sims series. The reason today's episode is particularly special, guys, is because today I'm going to try my hand for the first time ever on camera at rebuilding a famous TV apartment. And today's TV apartment, drum roll please, well you probably already know it because you read the title, but anyway, it's the apartment from Seinfeld. In building this apartment, guys, I really wanted to go for an apartment. I didn't want to just replicate it with a house, so the actual structure is going to be a little bit off. I cycled through a bunch of apartments to actually try and find the right one. In the end, this one seemed to work the best. The way I compensated, because the shape wasn't quite right, wasn't exact. You'll see in the top right-hand corner there, I did create a little hallway, but otherwise it worked out pretty good. I've gone through a lot of different source materials to actually reference this build. I've looked at pictures, I've watched episodes, I looked at other people's videos of the actual VR experience of Seinfeld, so I got a pretty cohesive picture of what this apartment actually looks like, or at least to the best of my abilities, because obviously with TV apartments, they are not always consistent. Obviously, just starting out here with the basics, we've got the doors, we've got the walls, that nice quintessential blue wallpaper. It's a little bit weathered, it's a little bit grody, but it fits for that 80s, 90s New York aesthetic that Seinfeld was itself trying to create. I'm going to start with the kitchen here, because obviously the kitchen itself is probably the most busy space in the series. I think the cast tend to spend the most time in the kitchen itself, sort of between the kitchen and the living room, as we'll find as we go on a little bit. Those sections are quite easy in terms of mimicking the source material, but when it comes to the actual bedroom and bathroom, those ones that remain off camera, there's actually not a lot of footage of them, so we have to add a little bit there. But just piecing together the kitchen as best as possible. I've used these blue top cabinets and sort of a more yellowy bottom cabinet. That's more what the Seinfeld apartment looks like. Going for a white sink here. We had to get a white sink because he actually does have a white sink. And there's a whole bunch of clutter around Jerry's counters as well. For such a clean guy, he actually does have a large amount of clutter, you'll find. And it's sort of difficult to replicate that clutter. A lot of it is in The Sims, like this fruit bowl here. It's actually blue in the show, but the white worked the best. That paper towel there, I actually based that on the paper towel which was hanging above his sink, but there's nothing similar in Sims. He also does have a wine rack, which is why I'm trying out this bottle here, but unfortunately that doesn't quite fit, and it sort of stays by itself. We needed a bit more on there, so I ended up deleting it in the end. Yeah, so Jerry's kitchen does actually have this sort of closed-in appearance to it. You can't really tell it from the show. It looks a lot more open because really that right-hand section with the stove and the fruit bowls is actually blocked off a lot of the time because of the camera angle. But it is sort of a little nook within his counters, and obviously that gets messed up in some episodes, but we're not going to replicate that because obviously Jerry wouldn't like that. Just messing around with some of the utensils here. I did want to try and get a red toaster, because Jerry does have a red toaster in the left-hand corner there, but unfortunately because there isn't sort of a red toaster in Sims, I had to settle for this espresso machine. I know Jerry doesn't drink coffee, but hey, he's not the only one using the apartment, right? So anytime Kramer comes in, he can use that there. That I'm doing there is actually trying to replicate the coat rack. There's normally a coat rack on the side there near the intercom. Unfortunately, we don't have any actual intercoms in Sims, so I had to sort of ad-lib that as well a little bit. Instead, I put this fire alarm and the thermostat. And just to polish things off in the kitchen, I finished off the little right-hand wall, as you'll see in a moment. There is actually an unshown wall in the Seinfeld episode. I found this Googling. I didn't even know it was a thing before, but there is an unseen wall, which is to the right of the kitchen, and I tried to replicate that a little bit with this sort of board of, it almost looks like a star chart, but in the actual photo, I think it's some sort of scoreboard. I don't know. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to stick there. I quite like this apartment as well for the windows. I think the windows fit pretty good with the actual Seinfeld windows. That's something you sort of struggle with the apartments in Sims, I find, is that you can't really change the windows. And even if you do, they kind of will look out of place with the rest of the apartment. But with this one, we're kind of lucky in the fact that the apartment itself does kind of look like Jerry's apartment as well. So it kind of works out in the end there. Just putting down some of these storage units. Obviously, Jerry's got the shelf at the back and a little computer table in the corner here. You might not even know that if you're not a extreme fan of the show, because a lot of this is kind of discreet. It's in the background. It maybe only shows up in 1 or 2 episodes. But if you do keep a close eye on the background, you will notice that there is a little computer table there. And it has a basketball hoop above it as well, but unfortunately that didn't really fit in. With the actual paintings on the walls, I was trying to mimic it as much as possible. This kind of looks like the picture of the guy that's on the back of Jerry's wall. And to accompany it, I wanted to go with one of Jerry's all-time favorite, shall we call it, cartoons, and that is, of course, Superman. So that's why we've got that image there. It's the closest I could get to Superman. Unfortunately, there's not the actual red, blue, and yellow, which we are all used to from the Caped Crusader. Just cluttering up the desk now with a few sort of office-looking supplies. Jerry's got this kind of black table lamp on the actual desk, and some pens and books and stuff. Just trying to make it look as officey as possible, but that's kind of what the background looks like there. With a lot of these decor, it's kind of difficult because you can't, it's almost impossible to get it precise, especially because some of these things are so difficult to see from the actual camera angles and that, and they're not always consistent, I don't think. So we'll just try and best replicate it as possible. As you can see there, we've got some black and white things and some sports memorabilia, and of course these kind of, what do you call it, shutter curtains here, which kind of mimic the actual apartment curtains as well. Obviously that back wall you never see, which is why I've just replicated the same curtains on there. The famous TV, of course, which we've seen smashed in different episodes and which has been a focal point for much of the series with the cast. These rugs here I was messing around with as well, just trying to get something that looked as much as possible like the actual rugs in the series. It's actually really hard. Like, it's difficult to tell with what a lot of that stuff looks like, especially given the fact that it's shot on this old kind of film. It doesn't really show up well. It's not sort of like the HD stuff we use today. Like I said, I did watch a few people's VR playthroughs, and the VR playthroughs were kind of helpful because it gave me a pretty good idea of how some of the extra rooms looked. I didn't copy them to the letter, though, I will admit, just because I don't think they actually replicate them that well. There's things that we see in certain episodes which don't really come up, so I've kind of gone half and half. I've replicated a bit of the VR, but I've also replicated what I've seen in some episodes. Just tried to piece together the apartment as best as I can. It's not going to be perfect in any regard, although I do think that these lounge sections are going to be good here. Obviously, I've put those roof lamps now. There are no actual scene, or there's no visible roof lamps in Seinfeld, but I did want to get a bit of light on the situation, and I figured those kind of matched the rest of the general aesthetic of the apartment that I was going for. The wall scones themselves are actually based on the ones in Seinfeld. You can see wall scones in the background of Seinfeld in the hallway as well, mind you. Over here I was trying to get this kind of fishy, you'll see this kind of printout with all these different fish names. Jerry's actually got a picture of cars on that wall. It didn't quite fit in that space, so I ended up using that rocket ship instead. Kind of met it halfway because there is also like a picture of some sort of robot in that wall, so I figured robot, cars, rocket ship, there you go, what have you. With a lot of these pictures, I just kind of went for a vague similarity, though. Obviously here, this is where Jerry keeps his bicycle, that iconic green bicycle. Well, I say iconic, it's sort of just in the background, but it's obviously a green bicycle. Unfortunately, there's no standing bicycles in The Sims, so I just ended up using this green ironing board, because I figured Jerry would probably like that. He's a clean guy, right? He's a clean guy, and I thought that fit well as a replacement for the bicycle. It's also got a picture behind it, as you'll see. It's difficult to tell what that is exactly, but it seemed like some sort of movie memorabilia poster, so I'll just put that up there. And there's sometimes this mat in front of the bathroom. So there we go, that's sort of the main room just about done. Here I move on to the bathroom. The bathroom itself was difficult because obviously we only have the perspective of the sink. You can only really see the sink in the background, so I did try and replicate that. The shower is actually not in that direction. It's actually sort of lengthways, but with the space that I had, it didn't really work, and I've just kind of ad-libbed the toilet because we never see the Seinfeld cast on the toilet. Probably a good thing. I don't know. Probably wouldn't have made it as family friendly as it ended up being. Instead of a window at the back there, I went with a mirror, but I still went with those shutter curtains to give the illusion of a window. So that kind of works out. If you don't like that, well, that's just fine. I do. I think it kind of works. And these black these black hand cloths, the hand cloths in Seinfeld, you can actually see are black in some episodes, so I tried to replicate that as well. And just sort of this bigger one. I tried two, but it didn't really fit, so I just ended up doing the smaller one and the larger one next to that shutter window, and I think that sort of worked out okay. It's obviously small, but I have tested it out. It is functional, so that's cool there. This little nook in the corner here I ended up using as Jerry's kind of closet. I based that largely on the episode with the Virgin, actually the contest episode, you know, where she comes into Jerry's house and she just wants to make it hooks. Everything on hooks. So that's what we were going for there. And I tried to make it as close to the actual episode as possible. It was difficult though, because I'm sort of limited with space. There's a lot more space in that actual episode. Probably because it's just a freaking studio and not a fucking tiny Sims block space. Any case, there was also sort of a armoire next to that, so I tried to pop that on the corner, which also appeared in the VR experience, although it was more in a corner. And here I actually got to use that fish poster, which was actually seen in that episode as well. I think they might have used the same artwork in the background for Jerry's closet. And I did use some of the VR for inspiration in Jerry's bedroom. Unfortunately, the VR sort of made Jerry's bedroom really small and minimalistic, so I had to copy those other sources. One of the things that I used was the episode where Jerry and Kramer switch apartments, you know, because of that chicken restaurant, so that did factor in there. There was another one as well, I'm sorry, I can't remember it offhand, but there was another episode where Jerry's in bed and you can kind of see his table lamps, which are actually black shades, and those were kind of the closest I can get. They're not exact, but they're pretty close. And there were actually a lot of pictures of cars in Jerry's bedroom, weirdly enough, so I did try and replicate that in a sense, because yeah, in the few episodes that we do see of Jerry's bedroom, you'll actually notice there are quite a few pictures of motor vehicles in the back. Obviously, when it comes to this corner wall, you don't really see a lot of it. I ended up seeing a blueprint that someone had drawn. Apologies, I can't remember the actual artist, but they had put a little chair in the corner here. So I figured I would try and do the same. And obviously just got that TV there to polish off the room a little bit. Tiny TV. I don't know if he actually has a TV in his room, but it kind of leaves that wall a little bit less blank than it would otherwise be. Because obviously we can't see it. There could be just about anything on there. So I just tried to replicate the general aesthetic of the apartment as much as possible and find things that I think that Jerry would have on that wall, since we don't really ever see that wall. And to cap things off in Jerry's room, I once again just put a tiny action figure of Superman. I did want to try and find a Pez dispenser here. I was really desperate to find a Pez dispenser. I was going to go with that little ducky, but it didn't quite work, so I just left that out in the end. Sorry about that, guys. That was that was a disappointment for me too. And just to finish off here, I add some details to the hallway, like this exit sign and I think a fire hydrant. I initially put the fire hydrant on the side wall here, as you'll see when I actually picked the fire hydrant, yep, there. But when I re-looked at the apartment, there's actually nothing there. So I did end up moving it in the end. And I had forgotten these radiators, so I just popped them in. There's 2 radiators next to Jerry's desk, so I just added them as a last little detail. And I think those look really good there as well. So that kind of finishes off the actual lounge room. And there I just ended up changing up the hallway a little bit. Because once again, when I looked at the actual apartment hallway, the pictures that we do have of the hallway, it does kind of have this slated, or what do you call it, slatted, planked. I don't fucking know. I'm not a home decor specialist, but yeah, that wallpaper, and I moved the fire hydrant over where we can't see it. And that about finishes it up, guys. Obviously here with a final touch, just deleting the Gremlins portion and adding Convivial, which makes the house more conducive to comedy writing and charisma, which I think is perfect for Seinfeld. And the last final little touch on it is just changing the name to, you guessed it, Apartment 5A. Here we go. 129 West 81st Street. And that's it. And that's Seinfeld. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I will be attempting to upload this apartment to the gallery as a single room, so you should go check it out there on my profile if you'd like to download it. If you happen to enjoy this video, or if you'd like to see me do more apartment and house builds, you can let me know by popping a like down in the corner. I actually did really enjoy this one. And hey, why not even subscribe for more? But until next time, guys, I'll see you later. Bye.